Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner, and today I am joined by Rose and Tovah Goldfine, two mind-body practitioners who met through their mutual connection, and one that I know well, All the Rage director Michael Galinsky. Tovah is a doctor of chiropractic medicine based in Israel, and Rosa is an ISTDP, that's intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy therapist, based in Australia. When the pandemic hit, they began a website and podcast called TMS Roundtable to talk about mind-body issues and bring people the information they need to get better from these issues. I'm looking forward to talking with them. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below and I'll get back to you personally. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars or purchase any of my PDFs at www.crushingdoubt.org. Tovah and Rose, it is such a pleasure having you here. I feel like we're old friends by now, which, I think that just comes with the nature of the kind of conversations we've had together. But
Thanks,
when I was on TMS Roundtable, I feel very at home with the two of you because
we've met before. We've all met before. This is not the first time.
No, this is not our first rodeo. So the way that I usually begin this is to talk about how each of you got connected to mind-body experience, how you discovered it yourself. So we're gonna take turns here, and I'll hear from each one of you, and then we'll open it up to a kind of broader discussion about TMS Roundtable, what it is that you guys do to help people, all that stuff, because I really want to highlight all the good people out there who are doing such good work. So, Tovah, we're going to start with you. Even though Rose got up super early, and I am
Rose, you are my hero.
It's amazing.
Rose.
It doesn't look like it's like 5 o'clock in the morning there. Bright sunshine in Australia.
Down under.
So Tovah, how did you come to mind body work?
Well, Dan, I have a story a bit like yours. It's heartfelt, and I just remember listening to you on our show, and it was like, wow. I mean, oops, my daughter's coming in. Here's to start over.
No, that's fine. Listen, we roll with whatever's happening here.
Good.
It's all moment to
So
moment.
it's a heartfelt story. It's just that, I grew up in a fairly difficult childhood. And then when I was 11, my mother contracted multiple sclerosis. And I say my life trajectory changed forever. And it's not that I went into the health field because of that. It's more like it made me who I am. And the bittersweet of it all made me the person I am. And I think our childhoods make us who we are. And we need to own that, accept that, embrace that. And so I probably didn't think about that until 35 years into practicing and seeing my work today. It's like, wow, like my mother's with me all the time, just like maybe your father's with you in that way. It's like I'm not in the blaming stage anymore. I'm not like angry. I'm not banging pillows. I'm like, wow, I am who I am. I have to accept it. And so it makes me a better person, a better healer, a better friend, a better partner. Having a trauma and having a mother with an autoimmune disease, which I believe MS is. It's a neurological autoimmune disease. So it changed things for me, and I became a chiropractor. And then I saw that. Is this a question you asked me?
I just asked you how you came upon mind-body medicine in the first place. But the thing is, look, you're right. It all starts at the beginning. Yeah, we know that.
So short story long. Well, what happened was it was about 20 years ago. Somebody hands me. I was always into body and mind, always trying to understand. I took my mom to see Dr. Bernie Siegel at University Penn before I was even in school, and she was on her walker and asking Bernie Siegel about her MS. So obviously it was in my life. She was into macrobiotics. So something was in my life about different, unusual, minority, not typical. Here we are down the road. I think it was about 20 years ago. Somebody handed me the book, Anatomy of an Illness, about Norman Cousins. And I'm just like, wait a minute. He laughs, he changes chemicals in his system, and he gets better. And his system, his neurological, his brain and from laughing and Three Stooges movies and injecting vitamin C. I'm thinking something already. 10 years later, I'm working on people in chiropractic, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, why aren't they getting better with the handful of adjustments and exercise, and I'm in the water with people, and I'm starting to think, chronic pain. It was really in Israel 10 years ago that I heard of Sarno. I didn't hear of Sarno in America. I heard of him. I thought, oh, this Michael Galinsky guy, he's probably so not available. How am I going to reach him? And another doctor friend of mine, a woman who's in Israel, who goes back and forth to Muncie, she's an osteopathic doctor, said, let's find him, let's call him. And she sends him a letter, and he emails her and says, yeah, well, because she thought to bring the movie, All the Rage, because we saw it. It was 10 years ago. And I'm like flabbergasted by his availability. He writes us a letter, he sends us a media kit, and we try to get it together. Her life changed and my life changed. 3 years later, I moved north. That was when I was more closer to Jerusalem. And I contact him, and we have a relationship. And he said back then, this is before COVID, oh, by the way, you got to meet my friend Rose in Australia. So I emailed Rose, I Facebook Rose, and she's like, hi, yeah, I'm into this stuff too. She comes to Israel and calls me from Israel and says, let's meet. I said, I'm here, let's go. Wait, we never get it together. She's traveling. She's a world traveler. She's amazing. She's a historian. Rose knows a lot. Here it goes. It doesn't work at that point. But then a year later, a year before COVID, September before COVID, Michael texts me and says, look, I'm coming to the area. I'm going to be in Italy. He had this book, the Mall of Civil, whatever. He wrote this amazing book about malls. And he went to Italy to print it. He says, I'm coming to Italy. I think I can get to Israel, and they want to show the movie. Because the first time it was shown here in Israel, I wasn't in touch with it. I wasn't around the energy. He says, I'm coming to Israel. Let's show the movie. So we got together with another doctor who wrote a book, Dr. Nir Brosh, who was also a Sarno person. And we bring Michael here. We show the movie to 300, 400, 500 people over 3 days. And my life changes again. Okay. And Michael stays with me, which was amazing. And he's just like this real person who stands up in front of 100 people and says, because he was getting translated from Hebrew to English, he says, if you can watch this movie with your heart and not your mind, it would be better for you. And I'm thinking, are these people going to understand that? Mm-hmm. So it was fascinating being with Michael. And at that point, everything changed for me. And I knew my life was even more focused on mind body than it had been, because I had a program, I had a sense of a direction and an understanding from John Sarno. And then it began. I mean, David Hanscom and Gabriel Matai and all these different people I started to put together. And then I've taken courses with Dr. Schubener. And then, so here we go. Now we're COVID, and I'm in touch with Michael, and we're in touch, and I haven't really, maybe Rose and I emailed, and COVID comes March 2019.
2020.
So 6 months after Michael was here.
Right.
And I see something, and I'm like, I get a brainwave, which Rose would say. And I said, we have to do this. We have to do something. Healing has to happen. I called Michael. I said, let's do something on the internet. Let's do a Zoom, or let's go live and educate people. He said, it's a great idea. Call Rose. That's exactly what happened.
Wow.
The three of us get together, and maybe Rose wants to pick it up from here, or.
I was going to say, I think we got to let Rose get a word in edgewise.
Rose.
All right, Rose. You know what? Rose, start from there. Let's do this.
Yeah, excellent.
Start from the point where Tovah leaves off, and then we'll go back in time and hear your story from before.
Yeah,
but so you guys.
Well, Tovah called me, or Michael called me. I can't remember which one, and said, "Well, let's do some sort of a program that will educate people." We really came from the idea that anxiety is playing such a huge role in people's health, and we realised that on top of their anxiety and the pressures of their lives at the time, how much worse it is with COVID and how being restricted at home or being out in danger and creates more fear in people, and that we wanted to go into that gap, whatever they were doing previously, trying to manage their symptoms, etc. But there was going to be a new pressure on them. And that's where we came together initially. So then what we did was, as you know, we found various people who could help. And, we started off with Michael's All the Rage because it's a great template. So that template became our pattern. And each week we'd put up Michael's movie so that people that were just randomly finding our site on Facebook could actually get that knowledge that pain that they're experiencing is not insurmountable, and that it's caused from emotions rather than from a physical deformity. So that's how it started. And then all my ISTDP contacts have just been wonderful. They've all come on board, helped us. Tovah's health people in Israel have come on board and helped us. And we've created this library now. And, some of the psychologists and that I work with will say, I've referred my patients to you now, because now they've got a whole library of information, and much as you're doing, they can see at their own pace and their own level that, there's other people out there that can be helped, and there are people out there who can help. And that was our main goal. When Tovah and I sat down together, we sort of had a memorandum of understanding so that we knew that we were on the same path. We're quite different in our approaches and things, but that makes the fun of doing these podcasts because, we're different.
I was going to say, one of the things it's funny, we're ending up like rushing to the questions that I had more for later in it because they're so you guys. It's like how you two are so different in certain ways. And I love it. It's so fun.
We laugh so much and we'll argue, but we're the great, it's like what a pattern we've both created for ourselves to learn. We're both grandmothers, we both have grandkids. Like we have learned so much. And I think what we came together, I think this was something created from God. It was like a tikkun, like a karma that we had to come together and work on some of our stuff and help people in the same breath as we're working on our stuff. Right?
Well, and that does bring me back to the whole idea that you were saying at the beginning, Tovah, about it comes from the beginning. It comes from who we are. And Rose, I want to hear a little bit about who you are in this, how you first came to be aware of mind-body experience yourself. Did you have symptoms? Was that...
Well, I recognized that I had symptoms. I think there aren't many of us in the world that don't have symptoms.
No, everybody's got symptoms.
Exactly, yeah. Because our body, as Bessel van der Kolk says, the body keeps the score. So, like if you've got a pain or an ache, it's logical to ask yourself, well, what else is going on? Mm-hmm. But I didn't know the formula. I didn't know how to ask that question until I was trained in ISTDP. And because I'm a nurse and a midwife, I've had a connection all my adult life that some people have more pain than other people, and yet it's the same problem that they're encountering. So I've always had that in the back of my mind. And, the whole idea that we had a discussion about placebos the other day on the round table. And, I realized it's not about placebo, it's about attachment. And if you're attached to a person and they feel confident with you, and even if it is a vitamin C you give them that will help them sleep, that will help them sleep because someone listened to them deeply. And that's what I love about ISTDP. And I came to ISTDP because I'd already done all sorts of counseling, grief counseling, and, as a midwife about breastfeeding and all of that. But it never, ever touched the inner life of the person. And then my husband died, and I was in a very, very odd sort of place, because I was angry with him dying, but I was relieved that he was dying. And it's like I had a knot in my gut this time. And a friend of mine, I said to a friend of mine, I've always done all this sort of stuff, but it doesn't mean anything to me. And he said, look, I've heard about this ISTDP. Why don't you go there? And I did. And as soon as I started doing that personally, I went to Vancouver to a conference, an ISTDP conference or IEDTA conference. And I saw these amazing psychologists and psychiatrists and social workers doing this work. And I came back to Melbourne and I said, I want to learn this. So I did the 3-year core training, and then I did another 3 years advanced training so that I was proficient. And I thought, all of these people are all, they're not nurses. And I thought, will I be able to get my insurance doing this and, my professional indemnity? And I phoned the insurers and they said, but don't nurses always do that sort of stuff anyway? And I thought, yes, we do every single day, but we don't notice it because we're there with the patient. Right. Going back to actually acknowledging the mind-body situation, as a nurse, you walk into the patient's room and you can see by their face if they're suffering or not. And many times they'll say, oh, no, I don't have any pain, but you can see on their face that they have. So I've probably got a little bit of an advantage because I can see by a person's breathing, by their facial expression, what's going on inside them. So I'm blessed in that way.
It's interesting because I think each one of us in this field comes in with the advantages we have. Whatever it is that we know, we're bringing a certain mindset to things. I mean, I even think about Dr. Sarno. I had on Arlene Feinblatt, Dr. Arlene Feinblatt, and she brought certain things that Sarno couldn't have. And it was the two of them together that did such a great job. And sometimes it is the different people. So I think it's fascinating to think about what you guys bring to the table together. And I wanted to ask you, when patients come to see you, how does it go? How do you engage with them? What is it that you are able to do, and how do you operate?
Well, for me, I just ask people about their feelings. It's simple.
But do the two of you work together?
I ask them what Rosie asked them about their feelings, and it works.
But you guys do work together?
We make a great balance. We make a great balance. And this is what happens so naturally. Rose and I's relationship is just a very natural, flow of understanding. And we realize we have mutual things that go together, that integrate.
Right.
And we work with people together, and it can be very successful. And a lot of people, they want what more Rose wants, or what more like Rose does. It just depends who the person is, where they're at. And so we have the Roundtable, which is an amazing thing. It's just unbelievable. And that's been incredible. It takes up a lot of our time and energy, and it's all volunteer, and it's just heartfelt and humble that we do a lot of this work ourselves. And then we have this practice that we started to do together, and it's been tremendous. We've helped a lot of people. And Rose, go ahead, talk a little bit more about what we do together.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
Yeah, you're welcome.
What do you want me to say? you said it.
No, there's always something I didn't say.
This is the advantage of working with another person. If you don't want to say something, you just hand it over to them at the exact moment that you
exactly.
When I get anxious,
Dan. Yes, I know how to move.
I feel when I get anxious, it's like, okay, time for Rose.
Right. Well, you can rely on each other. With me, if I get anxious, I have to turn it over to myself, some other part of myself, I suppose.
Rose, there's always something you can add. Come on.
I'll add something. I'll get you both off the hook. So here's one thing that I was struck by when we first started talking, and that is that when I started doing this work, I'd gotten better from my 8-year bout with back pain, where I also was astounded that nobody knew about Sarno at all in all that time, because that got me better so much so quickly. I wasn't fully better, but I got 75% better from reading the book, and then I had to work at it. But what I found is that I had to keep working at these things. And as I started to incorporate it into my practice, my whole way of doing therapy started to shift dramatically. Because, and I think, Rose, you experienced something similar with that, and I know you did too, Tovah, in terms of totally shifting your work. When we understand something new, it's like you can't work in the old way anymore.
That's right. Precisely.
You just can't. And the short-term model actually became much more appealing for a number of reasons. But one of them was, once I understood this well enough, the body taught me so much about what goes on in psychology that I didn't need as much time to work with people. The short-term model became very in line with things. So I actually, when I started doing my short-term work, I didn't even know what ISTDP stood for. I mean, it's pretty obvious now when you think about it. Intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy. But I had studied Davenlou briefly when I was in grad school. And Davenlou, just for those people listening out there, is one of the earlier analysts who pioneered that short-term model. But I didn't know that there were people out there in mind-body work doing Davenlou-influenced work. There were a lot of them. But I didn't even know. I came to it on my own, and it's just funny to me that what I came to fits so much with what people are finding to be successful, and I couldn't do it the old way.
Yeah. Mm.
So,
yeah.
Rose, you discovered that's okay. You discovered ISTDP in 2008. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, tell me what that was like, and then let's talk about how each of you utilize that. Because Tovah, you're not trained in that, or
I'm not, but you hang out with Rose for a little bit, you're trained in it.
You picked up.
No, I'm not trained in it.
Yeah.
I'm not trained in it, but I love the TMS work. I love the neurocircuit work. I love the feeling work. I mean, being a sensitive person, you can't help but connect to people's feelings. And I've learned a lot from Rose, and I've been in and out of therapy most of my life. And I always knew I would walk away with gifts and messages and life experiences. And we're old dogs, but we're just like fired up when we do work with people, and we sincerely want. Look, here's the thing, and I'm going to let Rose talk. Is that there's nothing new under the sun. Rose and I, we care so much about people getting well, and yet, the problem is not everyone has knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge out there. There's a lot going on. It's the century of knowledge and information, but we struggle with applying it and implementing it. And Rose and I have figured out together, without even talking to each other about what we're going to do, how to help our mutual clients, our listeners, how to implement, how to go home from the show or home from the seminar or home from the workshop and implement it that moment. And Rose is an expert at it, and I've gotten very good at helping people, and I know, and Rose knows, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. Mm-hmm. So, but that's what I want to say about what's special about our work.
So, Rose, can you talk about that? What Tovah just said. I want to get a sense of how you're thinking about the work in light of what she just said.
Be more specific for me, please.
Sure. I think that when people come to us, they're looking for the how-to. I really do think a lot of people at base are asking that question. How? Right?
Sure. But remember that they've had a pattern all their lives, and they don't know how to break the pattern. And if you think about it, when you're trying to do it on your own, and there's all these wonderful self-help books, but you can't break through the defiance, the resistance, that mindset on your own, because you've learned that pattern so long ago, and you've learned it before speech even happened. So now you're asking yourself as an adult to change, and you can't.
Well, right, and if they could by themselves, they would.
Exactly. And how I got in touch with Michael Galinsky, just going back a little bit, I saw a GoFundMe thing, And when I looked at his trailer, I thought, here's someone that's actually putting together what I do with patients all the time, checking their anxiety pathways, checking their defenses, and getting them to see that. So I put together, Michael wrote me a thing, or a couple of us a thing, and said, I'm coming to Australia. Can you help me set it up? So another girl and I advertised all over Melbourne, and we got 2 cinema full of people. Anyway, Michael came and we showed the film, but one lady phoned me on her way home from the theatre. She lives in Frankston, and she phoned me, and Frankston's about 30 kilometres away, or more maybe. She phoned me and she said, I told my husband how mad I was with whatever was happening. I can't remember anymore. But she said, my back pain went away.
Right.
So she understood that she was repressing her feelings, but many people can't understand how they're repressing their feelings. So coming to therapy and coming to this sort of model of therapy actually exposes their feelings, their anxiety, and things like that.
And
so
I
don't know that I've answered the question, but
I don't even know what the question was. So that's fine.
Okay,
we're just flowing here. But okay, here's what I'm thinking. I do think that's incredibly important, and that's a big part of the work, of course, to help people open up to connecting the emotional experience to the physical experience. But I do think that one of the problems that all 3 of us face, and anybody in the mind-body field faces, is that people are coming to us with way too little information on certain things, like what you were saying, Rose. They don't have enough information on what's going inside of them, but they also have way too much information. They have so many voices now.
Okay, but that's about symptoms. It's not about the cause.
Right.
It's not about the fear.
No, that's true. That's true. But this is one thing, this is one way that I work that I have found exciting and fun, is I actually, weirdly, I almost do things opposite of how I used to do them, where I would try to integrate everything. Now I try to separate them out to recognize the different problems. So if you're working with fear, absolutely. It's that core emotional state. You're not going to get there with some, affirmations. You will not get there that way. Unless they actually strike at the heart of it and actually change the self-belief. Yeah. But there's also information that we can get to people about, well, but what's happening in this area? What's happening that's making you not understand, let's say, what's happening scientifically? If they're saddled with that, they're saddled with another problem too. I think you will agree with that, but if not, we can spar. But I think
take out your sword, Rogue. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Rose.
I think that there are different problems, and I'm just saying what we're hearing. The questions we're hearing, the things that people are craving, are ways to understand this. And Rose, I think you're speaking to one of the most important ways to understand anything, if not the most important. But there's still ways to organize it, and I want to empower people to not feel solely dependent on the therapist to help them uproot the emotional issue, and actually rely on their bodies, because their bodies are going to tell them anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty about ISTDP, because you disrupt the whole thought pattern, and then the person's got a whole week or a fortnight to remain disrupted and be aware that this way of thinking, no, it doesn't really work for me, does it? It doesn't work for me. And, what I love about the work I do is it creates character change in people. And I saw the character change in myself when I did this work. So I know it works. And I know that the more I can disrupt the thought pattern, the more the person will take ownership. And that's what we want. We want the person to be happy to say bye-bye to us at the end of the day, and know that they're on a different trajectory.
Yeah, see, and I think this is often the case with people who are in different fields coming into this work or thinking about it a different way. We're often saying similar things in a different way. What you're talking about is what is my power column. It's the aspect where you can't be the same person you were.
That's right.
If you keep being who you are, then you'll get the exact same results. and but they don't know how to change necessarily. And one of the things that I think each of us does in our own way is we get in there with them. We help them
And it's scary to change. It's scary.
It is.
So
it is, but I'll just throw, maybe this is just my overly optimistic side. It is very scary to change, but once you start, it's exhilarating.
You can't go back.
Of course.
It's fun. I mean, I used to put it this way. I used to be a kid who was super nostalgic, and I just like wanted to stay exactly where I was. And now I've been changing so much that I change every day. Like I've changed over the course of this interview. I mean, and I love that.
That's the healing. That's the healing, is movement.
Yeah, I was going to say movement is the word that was coming to mind.
Yeah, movement. Movement.
I think at base, everybody who comes to see us is stuck in some way. Everybody's stuck.
Yeah.
And we have different ways of moving people. But I love, Rose, that all three of us are committed to actual results, actual movement.
Yes. Well, if you don't get movement, you haven't done your work, have you? You haven't broken through the defenses and the anxiety and allowed the person out the other side. Of course, the work I do is based on attachment theory as well, which is an important, as Tovah was saying just before, about how once her mother had MS, it changed her trajectory in her life.
Yep.
And of course, attachment is about how we relate to our original caregiver and how we've then had to amend our own experience of life to, how do I put it, to fit in with other people. It's as if pre-verbally we figured out how to do it, and then it stayed the same way all the way through. So, yeah.
I think it's very well put. And sometimes we don't even, you know what I love about this work and what the body teaches is that I didn't even know certain things were possible. I didn't even know certain things were a problem. I just thought they were. It's like, well, that's the way it is. I love it. But then the body was like, well, I think you'll change your tune once I wrench your back for 8 years. I started to pay attention.
Awareness and mindfulness. And this is what brings in all the different, branches of, mindfulness, whether it's journaling or mindfulness, and it's awareness and, being present, being in the moment, not being in the future or the past. It's all coming together. And again, we're here in the cerebral part, but look how easy it is to apply. I'm not easy. I don't want to say that. I want to underestimate people's struggles, but and Rose and I will fence about this a little bit. It's a habit. It's a new pathway. It's a new character change. And once you learn it, like you just said, it becomes automatic. I mean, we get up and brush our teeth. We get up and you come to the show. I mean, you were right on time. I mean, we just have these habits that are healthy, and then we have these habits that are unhealthy. And I think it can be that simple. It can be that we can frame it any way you want.
Actually, that brings me to a point that I often say. There is a very big difference between things that are simple and things that are easy. And a lot of times people hear, when I say something is kind of simple, they'll be like, it's not that easy. And I say, I didn't say it was easy. I said it was simple. And that's an important difference. I think what we can do is we can make this pretty simple in a way. That doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean
somebody will get defensive right away. Like, what do you mean simple? What do you mean easy? Like, how can this be easy? How can this be simple? I'm in pain.
Yes, well, it isn't easy. I never say it's easy because it can be easy, but it often isn't. But
mostly it's not. If I can just, because we've got so many defenses that we've built up to keep ourselves safe. So some people don't have a lot of trauma earlier on in their lives, and they can connect very quickly, like that woman driving home and telling her husband how annoyed she was. I'm sure if we saw her history, she wouldn't have had early trauma. She wouldn't have ACEs. And, it's often hard to help people see that they did have ACEs and that they're okay, and that their building block was to hold them back from the pain and suffering of those ACEs. So, the harder it is for people to break through, it's because they've learned this pattern over many different ways to survive. So I just want to.
Well, not only that, I think it's a helpful thing for us to send the message. It's not easy, but if it's simple, it becomes easier. And let me give you an example of what I mean.
Can we say it's not easy, but it's possible?
Yeah. Well, I think we can definitely say that. But hold on. I'm going to stick to simple for a sec, because I think there's something to this, and I think it's important. As an example, if we're talking about why aren't people getting better from a complicated emotional experience that they've always had, I could say, listen, it is as simple as accepting your trauma and learning to love yourself. That's not easy at all. It's Herculean. It could take years. But it can be as simple as that. And the thing I like about simplicity, when it's right, I don't just say it, but when it's right, it hones what we're doing. And even if it's hard, at least we're doing the right thing then. I think I experienced this. I had 20 years of therapy, and a lot of it was very useful, but I would describe it as pretty meandering. There was a lot of, I don't know. We'll just take our time with this. We'll just explore it.
Well, you said for many years you weren't getting better until you had this conversation with Michael Galinsky. Remember?
Well, that's right. Actually, in a certain way. I had gotten better in lots of ways. But yes, Michael Galinsky, I said this when he came on to do an interview with me. He changed all of our lives, I guess. That's Michael for you. But we were talking about a therapy I was in where I was just kind of banging my head against a brick wall, and the thing is, my body saved me from that too. I got better from back pain, from reading Sarno, and I said to this guy, listen, you haven't believed in this stuff, but what do you think now? And he said the most astounding thing to me. He said, I just think you happen to get better now. I was like, how dense can a person be? They're just denying what is right in front of his eyes.
Yeah.
The thing is, if we're going to get people better, we have to use real science and logic. And I say this to people all the time. We're our own scientists.
I love it.
Each one of us is studying what is true and what's not. We've got to throw out bad facts or not non-facts, and we can't ignore any facts. That's how I think about it. What do you guys think about that?
Well, let me just say, and everyone has there's a lot of comparison stuff going on, and that's hurting people. Like, it's your own stuff, it's your own color, it's your own flavor, it's your own thumbprint, it's your own character change. You've got to really, like you said at the very beginning, like what Rose said, got to just know yourself, go deep, and keep peeling, keep scaffolding. Rose will use the word scaffold. Keep peeling the layer, because I had a class tonight. Michael was going to join us, and you know what? He has some hives, and it's affecting his face, and he's a little swollen. And I was like, that's real, and I might have had hives, a couple hours ago, waiting for you to give us the Zoom, a minute before the show, whatever. So I think it's also like, that's Michael's thing. And I said, Michael, are you having some stress? He said, duh, of course I'm having some stress. I said, well, Rose has taught me a lot of ISTDP. You want to meet,
right.
Trying to kids. So I think it's also very individual and very important that we know ourselves. We're not Dans, we're not Tovahs, we're not Roses, we're ourselves. And that's the beauty of what you do and Rose and I do, is we draw out the beauty in people, that we mirror the beauty in them and say, look at the monster under the bed. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And look at my way of interpreting that monster in my way. And I've come to see we all have such value, every single one of us. And that's what I try to instill in anybody that I'm meeting with, and that's the power column. How do you unlock the specialness of you? And your trauma is a huge part of your specialness. That's it's not something we are glad happened, but it is a big part of what makes you you, and you're special. And that's, I love doing this podcast because I get to find out who each person is. Go ahead, Rose. You were going to say something.
Could you refer yourself to a book called The Wounded Healer?
The Wounded Healer. Who's it by?
Henry Nguyen.
Okay.
And what he did was he wrote about the fact that his trauma that was healed, that scar, then allowed him to have an understanding about other people's scars.
Oh, yeah.
And even the word, like you don't need to read the book, but that whole idea of a wounded healer means that that wounded person has had a trajectory and they've come out the other side. And their wound, as Tovah was saying, has made them who they are.
Yeah. And when we develop, you know how scar tissue is actually stronger than the original tissue?
Yes.
It has to be, doesn't it?
It's just like that with emotions.
Yeah.
Guys, I feel like I could talk to you forever. And because of that, I would love to bring you back again if you're open to getting up at 5 a.m. again, Rose, because I don't listen. If Tovah's willing to stay up later, I'm the one who has the easy position here, actually. So,
what time is it in America? 3 o'clock or something?
It's 4:35 here in America.
Okay, yeah. Could I just mention, Dan, before we sign off, that actually Sano went to see Davenlu.
I didn't know.
I found
Amazing.
out. Yes, and that's how Arlene Feinblatt became part of the picture, because Arlene was already trained in intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy. And when when Sano heard about Davenlu up in Montreal, he went up there apparently and met him. And wow. I found this out through the early ISTDP psychologists and psychotherapists that trained under Davenlu, that they all knew one another. And Sano changed his way of looking at things after speaking and spending time with Davenlu. So it's intimately connected, what I do and what Sano did. Now, when we look at the lessons that he taught, but some of those people were able to heal from the lessons, but others he had to send to the psychologist. And we know about Arlene Feinblatt, but there are probably others as well that were involved that way. So he drew on all the information. And the other thing I want to comment on is the 1960s was such an sort of like an opening period in modern life. We had Timothy Leary playing with psychedelics. We had Davenlu unlocking the unconscious. We had Sano lifting that out and creating a mind-body concept that Bessel van der Kolk is now talking about. Gabor Mate is talking about.
Beautiful, Rose.
Those early pioneers were there opening the door for these people. Yeah. So
that's a wonderful addition to this story. There's that movie Jefferson in Paris. There should be a movie Sarno in Montreal. Because I really he's such a legend to me in terms of what he did, and I follow in his tradition. I think we all do, in terms of I'm going to think about this. I'm not gonna just get fed something. I'm gonna think about what makes sense. When he met Davenlu, he must have been like light bulbs going off instead of just being like, okay, well now I'm gonna think like this guy. Yeah. He was thinking for himself, and it's another thing I appreciate about the two of you, because you not only think for yourselves, but you have different ways of thinking that you bring together in this really interesting way. Thanks,
Dan.
Such a pleasure having you here.
What a lovely compliment. Thank you so much.
This was great. It is an
absolute delight working with Tovah, and we are so different, and it's just amazing that what we bring together and different concepts. So.
Well, listen, you were talking about revolutionaries from the 60s. I'm a Beatles fan, and together they were much better than apart.
Yes.
Same thing with Tovah and Rose.
Thanks,
thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Stay well.
You too. As always, when I get together with Rose and Tovah, we have a lot of fun. It tends to be a free-flowing conversation, and we never know exactly what's going to come up. And I appreciate them both for their differences, and that's one of the things that I like to highlight about the two of them. They're very different in certain ways, but their energy fits very well together, and they're so able to appreciate each other and leave room for each other and the patient. And I thought some of the important things that we talked about were things like people needing to come to the idea that while things I said they could be simple, we all admit they're not easy. It takes time to work these things out. Even people who get the book cures, we all have symptoms. Symptoms will come back, and the more you understand it, the better. I think that each one of these mind-body practitioners, whether it's Tovah or Rose, or Tovah and Rose together, or me, we have our own way of thinking about it. And I think it's our job as a community to come together and see what our commonalities are so that you all don't feel so confused by all the information that's out there and can feel that there's a way to understand each and everything you're going through, because I promise you, you make sense. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and I will get back to you personally.